find out.
All right, we are back now. Let's hope we've had some technical difficulties as of late. Let's hope we're good to roll on this podcast. I think we're rolling as things stand right now.
Yeah, if you hear me start cussing and screaming, actually, I don't know if you actually will hear it if that happens. But yeah, we've had some issues with
That's a
the
good point.
Riverside platform. Just saying that again, we've had issues with the Riverside platform. Maybe we need to switch into something else. But so far, up to like whatever the fourth or the fifth podcast or sixth one, everything was fine.
Yes,
And
sir.
then yeah, we had some issues with my audio not recording, and then two different split files. So I've like rebuilt one of the freaking podcasts that we did, which was kind of interesting to try to like splice in the timing of conversation. So it's a little choppy, but it'll work. We'll get it posted out there eventually.
Hey, we appreciate the
But
patience for
yeah, we'll
everybody
figure it
listening
out.
here.
Yeah. If there's anybody, but that's fine.
All right, cool.
Cool, man. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it here. I know we wanted to start off with some Black Friday, Cyber Monday stuff. Figured this would be a good timely piece here. Obviously, like the holiday season coming up, and teams are starting to prepare. I had a handful of things to kind of rattle off here. I made a post about it recently, and Steve, we were talking before in terms of like a client example that you guys had there. I don't know. How do you want to start this? You want to go through your client example? Do you want to round off some ideas? How do we want to handle this piece here?
I think we leave the client example to the end because it's a little bit non-traditional, the way that we're kind of approaching their holiday season. So maybe let's start with maybe best practices, kind of what we were thinking of starting with,
Cool.
and then we'll head into that.
Cool. All right, so I'm gonna try and refer to this list here, but I think a couple things that have been really helpful, especially if you're like in paid campaigns here specifically, because like a lot of moving parts, a lot of pressure on teams, especially like during the holiday Black Friday season. Sometimes this is like a largest portion of e-commerce business sales comes through, so like a lot of pressure on this time of year. So I think first and foremost, I would just recommend everybody load your campaigns early. Do not wait until like the day before or a couple days before. A lot of times in paid, especially if you're on like multiple accounts, you can kind of get by and just like load things the night before and you'll be ready to go. But in this environment here, would highly recommend to shoot for like a week to 5 days at the minimum in advance. Load your campaigns in market. Make sure those things get approved as quick as possible. That way you're not scrambling in the last minute to get things going. God forbid, like an ad was disapproved and then things were delayed and then you're, you know, pulled away from something else. So like the sooner the better in these situations. Get your campaigns loaded as quickly as possible. Get them reviewed. Be ready to roll for go time.
Trevor, should they, when they have it loaded, should they, after it gets approved, should they pause it or like set it to like a super low budget, like of $1? So I don't know. I've heard of possibly doing something like that where our algorithm can start working or something like that. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
That's a good question, and I would say don't. I would say load it and pause it, because the next piece that I would recommend everybody do with paid campaigns would be launching brand new campaigns. So don't just add new ad groups to your campaigns. I mean, I guess you could do that, but I would always recommend just building net new campaigns with the thought process that a lot of these bidding methods and algorithms are going to optimize off of signals. And if you have your campaign in market and then Black Friday deals come around and then you try and like shift those budget ups like really quickly, that's going to be tough on the algorithms. And then all of these different signals that these campaigns are going to receive are going to be a lot of these holiday shoppers trying to take advantage of these sales. And you could really scale up those new campaigns. So once those deals are done, then that campaign trying to then relearn to go back to net new normal, it's going to throw some things off. And
Mm.
then the other component to that is in years past, it's really great to have those campaigns as like your Black Friday campaigns, for example, or Cyber Monday. That way you could refer back to that data from previous years and have a really clean lookout in terms of like what that performance looked like. Now, again, if you wanted to launch ad groups that were just Black Friday, Cyber Monday in your campaigns that are currently active, not the worst thing in the world. I would just recommend that you launch net new campaigns and kind of take that approach.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the net new campaigns for not screwing with your kind of evergreen campaigns. Because, yeah, you're going to see an inflated rate of conversion. And then you're sitting here post shopping season in January. And obviously, the conversion rates are going to be dramatically lower. And the algorithm is going to try to figure out what the hell happened to my campaign because they don't
Yep.
know, right? They don't know it's Black Friday. They don't know it's Christmas time. Um, yeah, that's really, really interesting. So it's almost like preserving your evergreen campaigns by creating new campaigns. But you also sound like there is benefits of creating a new campaign for these efforts so you can maybe ramp and scale faster. That makes a lot of sense.
100%. And an easy way to manage that, which is also a component to this, would be just like, especially on the search side of things, just adding in some like holiday like keyword modifiers. So if you're selling like sneakers, like Black Friday deals for sneakers, Cyber Monday deals for sneakers. So you could still have some of those evergreen campaigns going, maybe pull back those budgets a little bit, but then having those deal campaigns in market with some of those modifiers just going to give you a whole lot more control and not have an as big of impact once that deal season comes out for those evergreen campaigns. So just a nice little tip there is how to manage that along the way. Um, in terms of ad copy, I think this is a might be an obvious one, but a couple things to underscore here is I would recommend all e-commerce clients, if you're selling something specifically, add a freebie. Like give something free away, even if it's simple like a sticker, a t-shirt, something like that, because it's a great way to add in a headline of like, hey, freebies included. Everybody loves getting something free, and not everybody's going to do it. So that's an easy way to differentiate yourselves in the SERPs when everybody's looking for these deals, freebie included, whatever the case may be. That could be the difference between you getting that click versus another brand taking that click. So adding in some type of freebie giveaway within your headlines, such a quick way to stand out during this time here.
Yeah, you almost want to make sure you have the highest chance for a click to come through because the rate of conversion rate is going to be that much higher. It's like the value of a click is worth so much more during this time period. I mean, it's going to cost you more as well, but yeah, because then people are just going to be naturally in that buy mode, which is kind of surreal. It's like I got to go buy things, so I'm going to be whatever I click on and entices me. So
Funny
makes
how just
sense.
everybody's conditioned for that at this point in time.
Yeah, no, man, it's like shit. I saw something. Oh, was it? I was talking to someone I know, and we were just bullshitting. And no, it was my wife. She sent me a meme, and it was like, "Oh, there's only 9 Fridays until Christmas." And so I'm like, "Oh." The first thing I thought was like, "Man, we got to start buying stuff for the kids, etc." Should have been doing it all year long, But it's like it. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like you're forced to buy.
You kind of have to at this point. All right, couple
Yeah.
couple other things here.
So
Um, oh, you had a question there.
no, no, no. I'll hit it at the end. I'll hit it at the end.
All right, cool. A couple other things that I just want to rattle off real quick here. Um, all right, coupon codes, ad copy, similar theme here. If you're going to have a coupon code, make it simple. Don't do some crazy insider joke or anything like that. Very, very simple. If you're Nike, I had an example here. If you're Nike, 30% off, make the coupon code Nike 30. All caps, one word, Nike 30. Fits in a headline, easy to remember. There's like no insider jokes or anything like that. Keep your coupon codes very simple. Include those within your headlines, include those within your ad extensions. Also, ad extensions, easiest way possible just to get in any type of like freebie, discount, etc. You could use a promotion extension, you could use a call out, you could use a site link. Use them all. Use as much of that like promotional copy as possible to make those ads as large as possible. And then also along the lines of copy, not just search related, just in general, if you're going to have social in market, search in market, display or programmatic or anything like that, seems obvious, but make sure like it's consistent across the board. Don't use different coupon codes on your social channels that you would in like your programmatic ads. Make sure that stuff's as consistent as possible along the way. And then just the last piece of advice here that I would recommend is if you have like set budgets, I would recommend that the teams, again, especially on the e-commerce side, get approval for some type of like scaling budget based off ROAS. So, for example, if you're typically speaking shooting for a 5x ROAS, during this time of year, you're going to be able to spend way, way, way more. So speak with your teams of like, hey guys, let's at least commit to we have a scaling budget and we could throttle that up as high as we'd like as long as we maintain that ROAS level. That way we're not missing out on these net new customers and all of this potential business and leave that on the table. I would highly consider teams having some type of scaling budget based off of ROAS and just take complete advantage of this time of year. So those are a handful of tips there that I think would be helpful for any teams to implement, and hopefully take advantage of this time of year.
Trevor, on the scaling budgets based on ROAS, how do you effectively do that when I have seen attribution delays during these busy time of years where it could be anywhere from like 2 to 3 days, maybe a week when everything fully populates? Is there enough data there to make those decisions?
That's a great question. And I think like there's definitely going to be a component of like a little directionality there. But when you start processing a higher volume of some of these purchase transactions, we're going to have some strong signals to say, hey, like we're really in this ballpark or we're exceeding that ROAS. So for sure, there could be some slight delay with attribution there, but I think we'll have at least enough data, especially when we're talking about like upwards of 10,000, 100,000, in monthly ad spend budgets, like in that range. We're going to have enough to like feed those algorithms to, at the very least, be directional with those ROAS targets.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And then the other question I had for you, how do you personally kind of manage this all during the holidays, right? Balancing out, hey, it's Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, changing the ads out if you are changing ads out. I know it could, like you said, be pretty stressful time of year.
It's the
It's
worst.
also,
It's great, but it's the worst at the same
maybe
time.
that's just it.
I would say like the
Okay,
one
that's
thing
fair.
that is helpful is a lot of these ad platforms do have like scheduling. So you can take advantage of scheduling. So you could schedule your ads to launch and pause. That's really helpful there. But like there's always going to be a component of like, Thanksgiving morning, like checking budgets, or like just like, closer to Christmas time of checking budgets. It's like it's one of those things that's like really tough to get out of. And if you have a team that could help you, that's great. But if you're in the weeds, like you kind of got to bite the bullet and
Yeah.
just do what you can there.
Okay, that's fair, man. That's fair. You got to do what you got to do to get it done. It's funny because on the SEO side of things, if you haven't been doing your optimizations for placements months before, you're kind of screwed. There's not much you can really do during this time period, like even leading up to it now, right? We're heading in November. There's not a lot you can do to really. I mean, maybe there's some content you're going to publish that's a little bit more time sensitive, of like shopping lists and ideas, but like you've already created that. But once it's in play, like the week of, there's nothing you can do SEO wise. So it's always been, for me, traditionally being most on the SEO side of things early on in my career. The holidays was like, well, I know the paid team's busy, but we have rankings, so we're good. Let me know if you need any overflow help. So yeah, crazy.
I was going to ask you that because I feel like that's always been like an interesting topic there of like paid teams clashing with organic teams during this time of year, and like
It's probably
what
it
can you do to
because
prep, like if anything.
I mean it's tough. The only thing, so it's like SEO wise, your evergreen keywords, you better be ranking for them now. And there's nothing else you can really do. You can't like push rankings fast in a month. It's almost impossible to do. There's the seasonal content, like I talked about. Maybe you're going to do some sort of like best shopping gift ideas, etc. But even then, that needs to be online and like a month before and get links to it, etc. So it's more of a lot of prepping and planning months before, and then just seeing the fruits of your labor as the
Yeah.
time progresses through. So I can see where there's that tension where it's like the paid media guys are like, fuck, I got to get all these things planned out. I got,
Yep.
10 different clients with 10 different budgets. And then the SEO team's just like, well, we're going on vacation. we'll look at the data, but yeah, there's not much you could do.
How about the this client example? Because I think this would be an interesting one, maybe
Yeah.
as
So
like
we'll
another
run
tip
into
or
it
insight
quickly.
here.
Yeah. So, client, we were brainstorming on, what is our plan from November 1st to December 30th, right? With our budgets that we have. Budgets are a bit small, or definitely a lot smaller than the previous year. So we're just trying to think like, well, how can we potentially maximize the biggest return? And we presented two scenarios. One was the more traditional scenarios of like, hey, ramping up ad budget during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, time period, and as we get closer to um, actual Christmas and whatever your like drop dead shipping date is, right? That kind of standard scaling of budgets in that time period from spend perspective. But we also had another idea that we're entertaining where we looked historically at last year's numbers on a weekly basis, starting from November 1st to the end of December, and just calculated the average order value as well as conversion rate for the given week, and then we scale, and then we ranked them. What week was the best profit for us, and it was actually there was weeks that were outside of the Black Friday, Cyber Monday that were more profitable for us. Actually, some of the highest cost per acquisition was Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Sure, it drove a lot of revenue, but smaller budget. What can we maximize? So basically, we're going to mimic our budget or mirror our budget based on how the best weeks that were performed last year. And so that's where we're going to be toggling the numbers based on historical data. And so we're not traditionally doing some, scale up during Cyber Monday, Black Friday. We are, but not as much. We have other weeks that we actually saw, like the post thing, like post Christmas, there was a big push. Like after the holidays, like after the 25th, we actually had a really, really good week last year. So we're going to put budget there where we didn't. So we're trying to like avoid the big
That's awesome.
high CPMs that are going to happen and cost per clicks during that time period. We'll see if it works, but I mean, we have high confidence that we'll be able to spend at a good rate. But it's just trying to spend wisely, for it. So we'll see how that works. It could be something interesting to see. If you have smaller budgets, that you have to be mindful of.
We should definitely follow up, and I'd like to hear that plays out. But I think that's such a good call there, and I love the thought process, especially to your point. If you have smaller budgets, how can you be as most efficient as possible with those budgets during that time? And honestly, I've worked with clients in the past where like they just create a pre-sale Black Friday and just run it like 2 weeks before or a week before, or like a post Black Friday sale. So like if you have smaller budgets, you definitely can get creative there as well. You don't necessarily have to like, hey, this is Black Friday sale or Cyber Monday or whatever, and run those during those specific dates. If you have a smaller budget, you could just create your own like little post or pre-sale and just take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of just questioning the norm of what
Yes.
people think is going to be the best time to do your ads. Um, because why not? If you have data, try to go off of that and be a little different and see if that works in your advertising. Sticking to the norm sometimes doesn't work, and challenge it, because I think shopping behavior is changing quite a bit. I think people are just buying a lot, no matter what time period. And so, yeah, it's just trying to, back it up with data. So yeah, we'll follow up with that
Love it.
post holiday, and we'll get an assessment on that.
Love it. All right, let's get into some Google side of things here. I want to just show,
Yeah, some news stories. Let's do it.
yeah. This is from TechCrunch here. Um, and I think this gives a really good visualization.
It's,
All right, once we got it up here. So essentially, this headline is Google's actively looking to insert different types of ads into its generative AI search, aka SGE, our favorite acronym. And if we scroll down in here, I think this gives a really good example. This is okay. So the example that they use here is easy for them to learn surfing, and then I think it goes into private surfing lessons here. So essentially, the main takeaway is when using that generative search experience, I think Google is learning when is a prime time in that conversation to then insert that ad. Um, as we've been saying, within SGE, obviously Google controls what the output is. There's no way that they're going to completely get rid of ads. I think just the way in which the ads are presented, the time they're presented, and how they're presented, Google's probably just going to collect a significant amount of data and be able to inform when's the best time in that experience to provide a link, whether organic or paid. I don't think this is like a huge noteworthy story. I think it's worth at least just mentioning here, but like not a big
Yeah.
surprise to see that in some of these like generative experiences that Google's going to insert ads and try and make money. Not a shocker.
Hey, Trevor. So in this example, the search query is what is it? Is it easy for them to learn, or is it easy
Is
to
it
learn
easy for kids
surfing?
to learn
When
surfing in
does the ad
Maui?
appear? Yeah. So when does the ad appear? Like, is it below the SGE kind of snippet,
So
or is
if
it another
so
search query?
on this left side here, is it easy for kids to learn surfing in Maui? Then it just gives you like a general like overview of like if it is or not. And then I don't know if they clicked on like this one in specific or they had like another query that pulled up, but essentially it's like okay, they got information on if it's easy to learn surfing in Maui, and then the next step would be like, hey, here's guides or here's surfing lessons, here's where you can get them surfing lessons, and then links out to then these sponsored posts here. So kind of like a
Yeah,
general like transition in there.
I only bring it up because it's almost like Google's predicting what the ad would be that would be relevant based on an informational query. It's like,
Yes.
oh, because like lesson is not, surf lesson is not put into that search term. So they're implying that someone searching for this would would be looking for surf lessons. So it's like when you're buying a keyword like surf lessons, that would be the typical search result. So it's like I'm wondering if they're trying to predict what ad should be there, um,
100%.
on the query.
I
That's different.
That's
Hmm.
such a good call out. I had a same process or it's the same thought process, but think you articulated that better. I think that's what Google's trying to do here is if somebody's searching for is it easy for kids to learn surfing in Maui, there is probably some high intent that a parent is looking to travel to Maui and a potential activity for them to do in Maui is having their kids surf, which they clearly don't know how to do because they're asking, is it easy or not? So a natural progression there would be, hey, they're coming to Maui, they're going to look to surf. Why don't we link to some surf lesson options, and why don't we just make those a paid option there? So I think that's exactly what's
You
happening
know
here. Is
what's
Google just
interesting?
predicting that kind of like next step here?
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of is the update that we're going to talk about next, which was search themes,
Search
right?
themes on Performance
That get
Max.
integrated into right. But this is kind of like a search theme scenario in
Yes.
this spot where it's like it's almost like they're trying to connect, yeah, like more of a theme behind the search query and getting away from the actual search term itself. And that's what a lot of Pmax is built off of right now. You're going to be able to do it, and we'll get into that more. But I think that's what Google's trying to do is decode a search query and understand what would be some potential ads that individual, based on their mindset, would be relevant. So bidding by search terms could be a thing of the past eventually, where it's like it's not specific search terms, it's like search themes. Really weird. Okay.
It's
So,
interesting. But
huh.
Google, it's so smart, obviously, and they have so much data to like figure this out. I think that is exactly what's happening here. And like as we were chatting about this, I know Pmax search terms is up next. I had a very similar thought to that. So this is interesting to see, and I think like we're kind of onto something here. And then to get to that piece, um, a huge update that was just announced yesterday. So we're recording this on October 27th, Friday. They announced yesterday that Performance Max, you can now add search themes. So it's not necessarily like you're adding keywords to bid on in Performance Max. You're adding search themes to give your asset groups. So in Performance Max, instead of ad groups, you have those asset groups. You're getting asset groups more information about your offers, your landing pages, etc. So they had a example in here where essentially what you could do is you could add up to 25 and I think they call it out down here. So you could add up to 25 search themes per asset group. So the example that they gave was if you're advertising, an outdoor event for like a museum here, and you didn't have time to spin up a whole dedicated landing page, one of the signals that Performance Max is going to pull from is your landing page. So if you don't have the ability to like spin up a landing page, you don't have the dev team, the budget, whatever the case may be, you could add search themes to your Performance Max. So for example, they included in here like a search theme in that instance could be like activities for children or outdoor recreation. So when somebody's searching for activities for their children or outdoor recreation on search or on YouTube, etc., when people are browsing like that type of content, you're then eligible through your search themes to then appear in that ad inventory with the idea that like, hey, here's another signal Performance Max to pull from. These people are looking for these activities. It might not have appeared on the landing page to specifically say outdoor activity for children, but because you added those search themes in there, you're then eligible for those ad auctions where or ad placements where parents are looking for that type of content. So very similar thought process here in connection between the two.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if what are they doing currently if someone like in this example that they didn't put outdoor activities on their landing page and someone searched for that, I guess they wouldn't appear for it, but now if they enable the search theme, they will. Um, or the inverse, like you did mention outdoor themes on your landing page, but you didn't specifically bid on it. Were they still showing ads based on just the landing page itself? Almost like a DSA campaign in Pmax. Like that's
Very
part of the
similar there.
Pmax
Yep.
process. Hmm.
I think a good way to think
Yeah,
of
I'm just
it would
thinking like
be
as we're moving away from. Yeah, sorry, I know there's a little bit of a lag. But I was thinking that with search, like I'm just so still search focused, right? Like if I'm buying this keyword, etc. That's what I want to show up for, or DSA is pulling off this. I guess it's the whole mindset of Pmax and just letting them figure out what is going to work best. Um, hmm.
100%.
Not sure I feel about it.
I like it because I think this could, like, I think another way of thinking of this would be like for 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 a simple example, say if you have um say if you have like a higher education client and their classes are offered in person or online. You should have that on your landing page. That should be pretty obvious. But say, for example, it wasn't, and it seemed like it could be through the copy, but it wasn't super clear. If you then add in person options, online options, this would then give you, this would just provide another signal to be like, oh, this is actually a really relevant. Somebody's searching for online options. Whereas prior to these search terms, Pmax might not have appeared that ad for that user because they weren't clear if they had that in person or that online option, and they didn't necessarily want to spend that ad budget. So it's like giving another layer of detail where your landing page might be lacking, or it might not be as clear on the landing page itself. So I think it's just another way to kind of like filter and refine your targeting a bit further with some more context for those data signals.
Yeah, no, okay, that's helpful. I'm just thinking that in a year from now, we're not going to have search campaigns anymore. Everybody's going to be building out Pmax campaigns because you can add search terms, you can add now search themes. Why would you ever do a traditional search campaign?
That's where we're headed. I think that's where we're headed.
That's scary. That's crazy to think about. It'd be like almost like if Google, like, we didn't have search campaigns before, right? Let's just like think that didn't happen. Just have amnesia. And this is how you do advertising with Google. And you give it search themes, you give it search keywords, you give it a bunch of assets, you give it ad copy, and then it goes out throughout its network and provides you the leads that you're looking for. I think it makes a lot of sense on like the more straightforward e-commerce, B2C. B2B, though, I'm skeptic of it when you're in some very, very specific search terms that I hardly understand of their services that they're offering. But, I don't know how well Pmax is going to do down the line for B2B. Maybe that's a whole nother section we can spin off at another point, is like B2B with Pmax. I don't know if it's going to work as well.
I think we're a ways away from the B2B side, and I think we're a ways away from like the full automation of it. But I agree. I think that's where we're headed. And you also got to think too, it's like these, especially like in that AI space, I'm probably not going to be the best at explaining this, but the way in which AI can learn from its data in like an exponential fashion, I'm sure they could apply some of these learnings to a B2B space and over time really, really dial that in. So I do agree. I think we're like a little ways away from it, but I do think long term that's kind of like where we're headed. And even another point on that is I'm seeing all this, like today I just saw there's a new tool where the AI can watch a video for you, and then it could tell you what happened in the video. It could tell you emotions that were in the video. It can give you a whole transcript in the video. There's so many crazy different tools in the generative, like art and imagery. What happens when you get to a certain point where like you don't even have to give it assets anymore? It's going to generate a personalized image asset in real time for a specific user. Like you could really like play this out years down the line and see how like automated and crazy that could get.
Yeah. What's interesting is like on the B2B side, LinkedIn is always the favored channel, right? But why is LinkedIn typically a favorite channel? It's due to the targeting, right? It's due to the ability to target based on. Sorry, I'm just turning off stupid notifications here. The ability to target based on job profiles, companies, etc. Could you imagine if you had that filter in Google when you're building out a search campaign, that you could toggle on job titles, companies, etc., and layer that with Google? Um, just gets me thinking that um, the ultimate B2B channel would be that you combine the two to do that. But hey, Microsoft owns LinkedIn and Microsoft owns Bing. So why haven't we married the two yet? That's my question. Is with Bing, yeah, why haven't they married the two together yet?
So I know they've tested those audiences in the past, and this was a couple years back, but they've since like removed a lot of those options. I don't know, because I've had the same thought. There is some like functionality there, but like you, it would make total sense to have like a job title audience within Bing or Google. I don't know. I could see that happening, but I've
Hmm.
I've had a similar thought process in the past of like, why isn't that a full function, or like at least the same audiences? Because that would be so cool to literally have the same audience targeting across your Bing Ads network, versus your LinkedIn network. Whereas now it's kind of a bit more directional.
Yeah, I mean, all we're trying to do is give good ads, right? But people have to worry about the whole privacy thing. But it's like if really people gave us all their information across all the different platforms, we do a lot better as far as driving relevant ads. And ads are going to be a thing, and they're not going away. Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to happen though. All
I
right.
know we
Yeah.
just one more point there is like I know we hit on this in the episode with Gabe, um, but I've always had a similar thought. It's like I definitely understand people's concern for privacy, which is valid. Same here, but at the same time, these social platforms are free, and Google's free because of ads. So at the end of the day, there's always gonna be ads there. So wouldn't you want them a bit more personalized to you and not some like just random nonsense? I don't know. I'd personally want some more personalized ads. That would be my
I
preference.
mean, so okay, let's take this a little bit farther is like, okay, as part of the barting agreement of giving a little bit more information. And honestly, the information's already there. It's more like sharing it across networks, etc. Like the data's there already. Like they have your information. Like it's out there, but it needs to be just shared across all platforms so it's easier for us to target. That's the thing here, right? We could take LinkedIn audiences, throw them in Google, and we're all good. We're going to give you a better ad. Maybe we could say there's going to be a limit on a per user basis of how many ads they get in a given time period, right? So it's not like, and that's where maybe there's a trade off where it's like, oh, okay, cool. I don't have to see ads all the time, but the ads I do see would be more targeted. And I would be okay with that from an advertiser perspective because I know my ads will be that much more effective. So we would have to put like a throttling on how many ads that you do see, right? Like your search queries, maybe it's only 1 out of 10, or it's half the time. I'm okay with that.
Especially if it's way more
Maybe that's the trade
targeted, way
off.
more effective. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Hmm. I just don't think it's going to work because everybody's making money in their own ways and they're never going to share data across. So it's a pipe dream,
And
but
like
I'm
we
just
saw,
thinking,
I was just gonna say, like we saw with Google, there's like inflating CPCs. Like they're not cutting into their revenue there. Like they're incentivized.
yeah, I'm just trying to think of what a world would look like in a utopian way of like with ads being around, you could dream about it, but I don't think it's going to work in where we're at.
All
Okay,
right,
cool.
one
Interesting.
other topic that I wanted to get to, and I know we chatted a little bit about this before we started, was obviously a lot going on in the world right now. Economy's a bit shaky here and there. Um, people talking about potential recession, and I feel like whenever those topics of conversations come around, in the agency space, vendor space, it's always like, hey, our vendors going to get cut? Our budget's going to get cut? Agencies and vendors, not part of the full time team, easy to cut them. I'd be curious, Steve, your perspective on how things have been client wise, project wise, if you've seen any of this at all, if you haven't seen any of this at all. I have a point of view here as well, but just curious, like, if you've seen anything at all.
Yeah. So, what I will say is that how are we going to see it? Typically, is and this is just based on history and what I've seen before. Is typically we're going to see it first in any sort of B2C client work that we do, specifically e-commerce. Um, and that's driven typically by consumer spending, right? That slows down, then the marketing slows down. And we see that quick. B2B, there's a big, way bigger delay. And sometimes there's not an actual big impact on the B2B side, just because budgets are different. They're a little bit more planned out. They're not as sensitive to consumer spending, and so that's delayed. So if you only do B2B, that's going to be hard to see that. With on the B2B side, just real quick, the only time you'd really see something dramatic is if whole industries are affected by something like the banking industry or the finance industry. I saw that got hit, budgets went away, clients went away, for that. but that's, kind of rare. It's, industry specific that you'll see the impact on B2B. So going back to your question, have we seen anything yet? I haven't seen it yet on the B2B side. So let's talk about if we're going to see something on the B2C side. Consumers are still spending right now, and we're going into the holiday season. So right now, I have not seen that. But I know before we were talking, and maybe we'll tap into this in your point, and I'll shut up here, is that, how are these consumers still spending money? Credit cards, buy now, pay later. Are we writing checks right now that we can't cash out at the beginning of the year, and that's when shit's going to get real bad? We'll have a nice Christmas, and then January we'll see it. So I'll leave it at that and let you take over there.
I think that's, I don't know. I don't want to be negative Nancy here, but I feel like we're not heading in a positive direction. And what you just said there could definitely happen. I've read in the Morning Brew this morning that, so this was data that just released here, that GDP last quarter jumped 4.9%, which was higher than analyst predictions. And then they also stated that despite headlines of fears and everything, consumer spending was up 4% in Q3 after growing just 0.8% in Q2. So consumer spending is ramping up, and we're potentially heading into a recession. Now, is that because of the holiday season? Probably. But the rise of like pay now or buy now, pay later, and I've also heard on the All In podcast that consumer credit card debt is at an all-time high. I think individuals are just like running up credit cards and buy now, pay later options. And that is not a good recipe for success in the future there. I know we talked about before, like with subprime mortgages, people getting mortgages that had no business getting mortgages. You can kind of do the same thing now. Like if you want to buy a TV or a couch and just like get on a payment plan, like you could do that. So maybe that's why we're seeing some of these like increases in GDP and consumer spending, is because there's like those options that weren't out there prior to a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think some of the like financial models and people are super confused on what the economy looks like. All the traditional numbers of like, hey, unemployment, GDP, like interest rates, like they're not lining up how they used to predict the future of like, hey, this should be a recession. It's just not happening. So I think we're learning new data, and I do think the outcome, like I said, don't want to be negative Nancy, but it's got to pop somewhere, man. Like
It has to.
it's nuts, man. We have the economy going on. You got wars. You get into the election stuff coming up next year, dude. I don't know. It's gonna
Who
be
knows?
wild. Yeah. So
I,
just find out before you flip out. That's my only advice. Don't freak out now. Find out first, and then proceed to flip out if you feel like that's the emotion you want to. But
I will say, like, the
yeah,
one piece, and I don't even know if this is like advice here, but like just from conversations I've had with like other agency owners, is it seems like what has been impacted thus far over the past couple months from clients has been some like more technical projects, whether that's like CRM automation or like, I don't know if you call it like wish list items, but more like shinier projects and like really deep dives into like BI or like something that's a bit not necessarily like, hey, we need this happening right now. It seems like those types of projects where typically you'd have like upsells on accounts for some of those like one-off engagements, those seem to be drying up a little bit. But when it comes to like evergreen campaigns, SEO, those types of things, that would be where I would be focused at right now in the agency space, is like some type of service that is evergreen, website hosting, website maintenance, like stuff that continuously needs to get updated, that's timely, paid campaigns, driving leads. That seems to be less impacted as opposed to, some of those like more technical projects. So I think maybe something just to be mindful of in this
yeah.
agency space right now.
And I would try to go find more evergreen types of clients from a niche perspective. B2C can be tough. Maybe going B2B more in more stable, markets. The healthcare biotech space is always pretty stable. But yeah, but I think we can leave it at that. I know we got to jump on some client calls here and wrap this bad boy up, but I think it's all recording. We should be good. We might
I
publish
think
this
we're
thing
good.
first before some of the other ones. But yeah, it's a good call today, man. Good call. Good podcast. What the fuck are we going to
Same
call it?
difference. Same difference.
Yeah.
Cool. All right,
All
we'll leave
right.
it there. Later.
See you guys.